Andres, could you please join now the panel? Because now we will have a discussion. Dear guests, dear speakers, could you please come here? Let's take your seats around the table. Everybody who've been presenting their opinions today, you are welcome. And let's have a discussion now. Please. Well, I have no doubt that we have questions, and many of us have questions. Thank you so much for all the presentations. And the issues you've been discussing are very important, not only culturally, but also politically, because all the problems Lithuania is facing, our political space is analogous. The problems are the same in other countries or similar. So thank you once again, dear speakers, for really impressive presentations. And I think that after translating them into or from English into Lithuanian will be announced in the media. So we've received only one question from our online audience, and the question was to Anna, and I think that it was translated to you. Can you answer? The question is as follows. In your country, what about the marriage of opposite sex couples? Because you have legalized the same-sex marriages. So what is the difference between? So you have this question translated for you, don't you?
So, can you hear me now? So, as I mentioned that,
Taip kaip jau minėjau, Vengrijoje mes sekame moralinę teisę, kad santuoka yra tarp vyro ir moters. Ir man atrodo, kad tai yra labai aiški žinutė. Ir nepaisant to, mes nediskriminuojame jo kitų alternatyvių santykių ir tos poros yra nediskriminuojamos. Ir tai reiškia, kad santuoka yra viena koncepcija, viena savoka, o partnerystė tarp dviejų tos pačios lyties žmonių irgi yra įmanoma, tačiau nėra jokios diskriminacijos.
Ačiū, dabar tikiuosi klausimų iš auditorijos.
Now, I do hope a question from the audience. Are there any questions from the audience?
Prašom, Giedrė.
Giedrė, you have a question? My question is to Ordo Juris, so Veronica, a very strong institute and huge impact on the traditional family protection defense in Poland. So, dear Veronica, what about financing or funding of your institution? We know that in the world, in Europe, those globalistic ideology, liberalistic ideology is financed and funded. And we all know about Soros activities. It would be interesting to hear about how you, in Poland, can resist the Soros ideology? Are there any alternatives to Soros or anti-Soros?
Būtent tradicinių šeimų šitą ideologijos stiprinimą kaip atsvara, nes mes kol kas matome.
Because today, what we could see, especially during the recent decades, that we see that traditional families are being destroyed. According to you, in Poland, are there any business forces, for example, which could serve as an alternative, not necessarily in Poland or in Hungary? Are there any alternative forces? And the second question is in terms of Europe. Since this ideology, this political ideology is coming from Brussels, and intervention into traditional families from Brussels, don't you consider or think that family issues should be, all the European countries should be joined, and some forces could be found which are for the traditional values, that with the joint activities, maybe these forces could participate in 2024 in the parliamentary elections? Why do I say that? I do remember the Soviet times. In 1989, elections to the People's Party of the USSR. And here in Lithuania, we didn't declare then independence in Lithuania. We elected our movement members to have the members of Lithuania in the Soviet Union to speak for relevant issues. So, speaking about the traditional families, so this harmful ideology comes from Brussels. Maybe we need to go to the roots, to go down to the roots and take all possible efforts in order to change the membership, in order to replace the leftists by family protectors. So maybe this could be the question to everybody.
There was a couple of questions, I guess, so I will try to answer to all of them that I remember correctly. So first of all, when it comes to our financial support, we are, as I mentioned during my presentation, we are funded only by individual donations of citizens. We do not receive any public support or support from some great sponsors. So one donation is approximately 20 euros, and traditional family is our main, let's say, entity that supports us. And when it comes to the Brussels and the European support for a family as the traditional family, I think it's very important, and we try to making joint organizations. For instance, in 2021, we established an organization called Alliance for the Common Good with 4 other organizations from Europe, and this is a way in which we are trying to influence the Europe and the European Union as well. And when it comes to the ideas for the integrity of Europe, one of our main, I would say, task is what you exactly said, to come back to the roots of the European integrity, to our Christian values, and the tradition family is one of them, and we of course should support it as much as we can. Thank you.
Ačiū. Taip, gal dar kas nors iš auditorijos nori paklausti? Kol dar yra pauzė, mąstote, aš tada paklausčiau daktaro
Question to Dr. Shver, please. In your presentation, you provided a very wide panorama, a discourse, political contradictions. Don't you see contradiction between the dissemination of freedoms, on the other hand, the attempts to suppress the freedoms via censorship, cancer culture? Don't you see paradoxical contradiction here? Because if we speak about freedom, we must have also the freedom of speech. In Lithuanian, well, it seems to me that you highlighted one of the leftism, Marxism qualities. The justice is perceived by us, but not by everybody. I don't know how to translate even by a small number of people. But if to speak more seriously, there is no contradiction. When we speak about the development of the leftist thought, freedom, well-being, welfare, all other goods, they are not managed as we imagine them, or as constitutional paradigm imagines. The common well-being is defined by the free community. So the laws should reflect. In leftism, there is a absolutely different paradigm. It is a liberation, fight against the obstacles, counter-revolution. So therefore, there is no contradiction. They bravely multiply liberty by prohibiting freedom, because the Constitution anticipates freedom as an individual's capacity to define own guidelines. In leftism, freedom is perceived in a repressing domination context. So practically everybody is not free, and they need to be freed, liberated against dominating enemies. So leftism does not recognize life freedom as a joy. It constantly fights against oppression, repressants, constitutions, capitalism, family defenders. Leftism needs to fight all the time. And what about when everybody is liberated? There is no final freedom concept. But the context of freedom in leftism is absolutely different. So this contradiction, yes, in leftism, you can multiply freedom by repressing the ones who do not agree with your program. Thank you. Continuing your subject. Question to Priest Paul. Why Marxism, leftism is coming from America? For us, America we associate America with freedom. What happened, what has changed in the American society, that these things started to dominate in the public discourse? What happened in your country?
Well, I think we have to look at the nature of freedom. All freedom, political freedom, also requires a limitation of freedom on someone. If I have the freedom to speak, you do not have the freedom to stop me from speaking. So it implies a limitation, a coercion on someone else for me to claim a freedom in the political or the communal sphere. that is at the root of our understanding of rights, right? So America is founded upon political rights, rights that are asserted for the individual that constrain action of government. That's the root idea of the American Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence. Think about the word independence, right? That I'm unconstrained by anyone else. Now, that's not necessarily an achievable ideal, for sure, but that's the idea that lies at the root of America. The problem is, in my view, is that the idea of that kind of freedom, the freedom of political rights, was founded on an understanding that human nature is of a certain character, and that the government has to recognize that character and those capabilities that are embedded in persons. See, the American Constitution, or the Declaration of Independence, claims that we are created equal in rights and liberties. What happens when we don't believe we are created at all? That somehow we just invent ourselves in some way? Then those rights become unmoored from those things that make the rights tenable for us. There used to be, and maybe still is, in certain philosophical realms, the distinction between natural law and natural rights. And natural law is not freedom, which is why it's called law. Natural law are items or characters that we cannot help but fulfilling. So we, as human persons, breathe, and we don't have a choice not to breathe. If someone founded a political party of the non-breathers, it would be a very short-lived party. Maybe it would advocate the right to smoke or something. You know, I don't know if that's non-breathing, but that would be an assertion against natural law to have some sort of a right that contradicts it. Now, in a less extreme maybe way, to assert a right to change one's sex doesn't violate natural rights so much as it violates natural law. The sex that I am is not something that I'm asserting as a right. I don't reach a point in my life where I say, oh, I'm going to assert my right to be male, right? But it's something that possesses me. I have no choice about it. I have to accept it. And so, in my opinion, the difficulty in America that has swapped these things, and that our good professor here has elaborated in a number of good ways, is that the understanding of rights which was grounded in these objective, non-negotiable laws to which we are forced to believe or forced to enact, right? Which included, of course, an objective moral order, so that we can't deny the justice of the moral order without denying reason itself in that concept. All of that now has become very subjectized and irrational and unmoored from natural understandings. So that the natural family is not an object, I think, firstly, of natural rights so much as it is an object of natural law. We can't not live that way. To begin to step away from living that way is to begin to be toxic to human life and to die as a person or as a culture. And so I think that what's the right word? Antinomialism, I guess, it has taken over in the elite understanding of rights and of culture, certainly in the legal realm and in other realms. In America, as maybe somewhere else, and America is being so good at propagating things. You know, we've now propagated it and have created lots of difficulties.
Thank you. Ačiū. Vėl kreipiuosi į auditoriją. Taip yra klausimas, prašom.
Questions from the audience?
Thank you for your presentation, Reverend. It was very interesting regarding the children and same-sex households. And I have a question. There were data from the researches from cohabitating and like so-called married gay couples, and where in this research data are civil unions if they appear at the data, like in which group, in cohabitating or in the marriage? And the second question would be if you could describe from your perspective why not only gay marriages but also civil unions or different names which are used all around the world are danger or threat or not good policy. Thank you.
Sure. Of course, in America, we do not have civil unions. We are we think of ourselves as being very religious in America, and it translates into our laws into a civil regulation, affirmation of marriage or nothing. And so couples who are cohabitating without any particular controlling laws. Now that may change. It has changed in a couple of states in the United States. So in the data that I presented from the CDC, they asked very basic questions about a family. It comes from fertility surveys, and so they choose a family at random. They get an informant, someone who's going to report on that family, and then they ask them, for all the persons that live at the address, what is their relationship to one another? And so if they say, well, person one is a romantic partner or a sexual partner of person three, right? Then they will ask, are they married? And they'll say yes or no. If they say yes, then that's a married couple. If they say no, that's a cohabiting couple in the data. If the person one and person three are of different sexes, then that's coded as an opposite sex marriage or cohabitation. If the person one and three are of the same sex, then that's a same sex. So it's a very basic fundamental categorization without any particular judgment or attempt to fit that into a legal framework. And that's what I'm reporting on. Thank you for the question. It's okay with me if it's okay with them.
Sorry, the second question was that how you consider or why you consider as a bad policy the civil unions, not only gay marriages, but around the world are in some countries. That's because I gave also the first question because I was thinking that in some states before Obergefell versus Hodge were civil unions before. So that was why the question. And the second question was why do you consider, based also on Catholic teaching, or Joseph Ratzinger writings, also civil unions are like bad policy because we know in Europe also some countries have these civil unions, not yet gay marriages, and why you consider that policy risky, bad or so. Thank you.
Okay. I'm assuming that you're asking this question about same-sex relationships. Yeah. Okay. Because I don't know that civil unions is necessarily...
Sorry, but actually you can touch also the civil union of opposite sex because it's in some countries they put the agenda like also same sex and opposite sex can enter these civil unions.
Right.
Thank you.
Yes, so in America, a civil union policy generally for opposite-sex persons would not be possible. In most jurisdictions in the United States, they would vote that down. Because, again, we have this ideal of marriage, and it's very strongly embedded into the American self-understanding. You know, we are the most religious, industrialized nation on earth. We are also the most marrying, right? The rate of marriage in the United States is much higher than in any country in Europe. Of course, the rate of divorce in the United States is also much higher. But we have this sort of ideal. In fact, some U.S. states in the South have strengthened the requisites for marrying. They have a kind of advanced marriage that couples could engage in that provide them certain other benefits. So the movement would be sort of in the other direction. With regard to civil unions for same-sex couples, I don't know that I am that knowledgeable to be able to speak to why that is a good policy or not a good policy, except to say that same-sex couples who are not married tend not to be as toxic for their children as those who do become married. And so, you know, that might argue for, well, I guess we should have civil unions if it's a choice between civil union and marriage. Politics and public policy is often a realm of compromise, where you don't take the ideal, but you take the achievable approximation of that ideal in lots of areas. You know, certainly our public policies with regard to financial benefits for the poor are of that way. We ought to do so much, but we realize we can't get support for that, so we'll do this much. So I think of civil unions as in that category with regard to same-sex couples who are getting married. I don't know that I have a deep-seated opposition to some form of civil regulation of persons who are going to live together in what I would consider to be immoral relationships, but nonetheless should have some sort of legal recourse that would bring their relationship closer into a realm of justice. But others might disagree and think of good reasons not to do that. Thank you for the question.
May I add one point to your question? From legal point of view. Legally, for example, in Lithuania, these progressive forces are promoting civil union project institute, but the problem is that once you put in civil union institute almost all the same features, key principles as of marriage, then if you approve such a civil union institute, then through the court system you can easily apply for marriage then, because content is the same, just names are different. Therefore, from legal point of view, it's a danger to approve such civil union institute, which would be actually mostly the same as marriage institute, with the same key features. Because, you know, from parliamentary legislation and from law perspective, the title is different, but from court system, it might be approved as the same content and equalized with marriage institute. Therefore, it is a little bit dangerous, you know, for civil union.
Ačiū. Prašom. Mikrofoną atneškit, prašau.
Thank you. I was heading to the same point that this kind of salami method is dangerous on this approach, because also the openness of this promoting civil unions, we have seen it in Slovakia, for instance, for years, like only civil unions. Now the same people or same or similar party are promoting marriage. So even civil unions are not enough, is not enough for them. So and we have these experiences also also in Austria case, I think, that Kurds are giving more and more power and privileges to these civil unions. So that's the practical question, that it's very hard to limit it on some stage. Maybe in Hungary you are more successful in limiting on some stage, but still with this European Court of Human Rights and other courts, it's very, very hard to limit it. Thank you.
And it's very interesting statistical point. It is calculated statistically how many years is passing from approval of civil union towards marriage institute. And there is few years. Basically, statistically, few years it comes to, you know, approval civil union, and then comes marriage approval for same-sex marriage.
Labadiena visiems. Norėčiau visiems iš karto padėkoti.
Hello everybody. First of all, thank you to all the guests. If you came from far away or from neighboring countries for visiting our nice country. My question is the following. Let's imagine we have a full freedom for all actions, and let's imagine it's a unit, and the more we have those puzzle pieces in it, let's say animal rights, minority rights, entertainment, can the rights of everybody be preserved, because it's the same field? Can they be equal? And if we take that natural family that had the freedom of speech and right to raise their animals in rural area, they had the right to decide on how to raise their children and what direction, that family was fully free. Then in that field of freedoms, we suddenly see sexual minorities, animal rights, climate change, political correctness. So, is it possible to have freedom in general when having this system, the freedom for the same family, which already has these new puzzle pieces in that area or field of freedom, and those puzzle pieces take away certain piece of freedom from the family, and according to the current trends, each new piece of the puzzle takes some freedom from the family, because the field of freedom does not change. I mean, the freedom of action. So that's some food for food. Who would like to answer? I will reply. And Mr. Arvidas, I will just reiterate what I've multiply repeated to our dominant media, even though I've stopped now doing that because it's not an informing media, but the channels of propaganda. Because they belittle your opinion or give you 5 opponents that drown your arguments in the sea of the opposing or negative information. But anyway, I believe that my arguments are important. I have listened and I'm grateful to our Hungarian colleague Anna, and I'm grateful for the family policy in Hungary presented by her, and I wish that we had similar policy, because it shows that the government cares of the population, of the continuity of the nation, of the state, so that the nation doesn't die out and become minority in its country. So I wish that it comes to Lithuania. So usually they ask the question, are you not against homosexuals? Why are you so critical about those possible homosexual or civilian partnerships, and why are you so critical about other points? And I answer that as Christians, we're not unfriendly or against other people who have that unnatural attraction to the same sex due to certain inborn aspects or traumas. And both the popes of the Catholic Church and other leaders remind us that we shouldn't belittle or denigrate people thinking differently, or people experiencing other sexual orientations. However, I'd like to go back to the constanta. What is the constant or constanta of upkeeping the society? And it is the union between the man and woman that gives birth to children. And if the humankind, if the society wants to remain, to survive, it should refocus on the constanta, because it is the precondition of its survival. If we as nations, as states, are interested in this, and if we are not interested in this survival, and instead if we focus on animal rights, as you insightfully said, or let's say climate change, that is political, or if we focus to those unnatural sexual needs, then it means we do not take care of us and protect us as the society, as people, and it's a very threatening trend. And we can only learn, and we can only learn that it depends on us, namely the dissemination of the Hungarian Polish experience, namely that the family between man and woman, giving birth to new life, is the basis. Okay, thank you. I could see a question here in the front lines.
I would like to compliment all our contributors. They've all been most interesting and very informative. A question for Reverend Paul, please. You presented some very alarming statistics, but overwhelming evidence in favour of heterosexual marriage. Could you explain the significance or relevance of a same-sex couple choosing to have a child? Is it significant if lesbian women choose boys or gay men choose girls? Is there some statistical evidence either way? Which is the most positive or most damaging experience, please?
That is a great question. There's not a lot of research on this topic because the numbers involved are so small. You have same-sex couples in the United States. There are an estimated 700,000 of them. And then you have less than a quarter of them that have the care of children at all. And then you boil it down if you have just lesbian couples. So you end up having very small numbers of persons. And it's hard to find them to do research. But I can tell you that a little bit of research has been done. Generally speaking, children actually do better with gay male parents than with lesbian parents. Both boys and girls. Generally speaking, if they are with parents of the same sex as themselves, they will tend to do better than if they're with parents that are of the opposite sex as themselves, which you could understand. If you're a girl child and you're being raised by two men and you start to go through puberty, it's hard for either of those men to provide some guidance and understanding with that. That's about all that we know about that. Yeah, it's a great question though.
And additionally, it's very interesting to know whether there is the statistics about the sexual violence.
Yeah.
The difference between heterosexual and same-sex marriage. The couples, let's say, couples.
You mean with each other? Or with their
whether
children?
sexual violence is bigger in same-sex couples rather than in hetero.
And so you're talking about not sexual violence on their children, you're talking about...
On children, on children,
okay,
yes.
so
On
sexual molestation, we might say. Yeah. Well, sexual molestation is higher in gay male relationships and higher with boys. So even though a boy would do better, generally speaking, with two male parents, he does face that danger of having some sexual assault, we might say, in that. But the rate of sexual assault is not so high that it's going to, take away some of those other benefits. Yeah, it's not often acknowledged, and it's not a nice thing to talk about. And we should be very careful throwing around numbers without context. But several studies have shown that the rate of sexual abuse for boys that are in the care of homosexual parents is about 4 times as high as in the general population. It's about almost 30%. So that's a concerning number.
Taip, prašom.
Labadiena, ačiū. Mano vardas yra Denis Andrašas.
Hello, thank you. I'm Denis Strade. I'm from Hungary. I'm working in the Fundamental Rights Center. I'd like to ask a question and address it to Andrus. What do you think about the Hungarian family policy in Lithuania? Thank you so much. The Hungarian family policy in Lithuania, maybe the significance to Lithuania, for instance. Oh, as we talked. In Lithuanian, please answer in Lithuanian. As we talked when driving, our media provides limited data on Hungarian family policy, on the true situation in Hungary. I would make another step. I would state that the biased and distorted information is provided about it. And if you ask how much we know about it, we know just the very minimum or nearly nothing about it from the public space. Therefore, it is very important to meet those authentic witnesses of it from Hungary and find out good information, good statistics about how the Hungarian family policy affects their society, and the effect is very positive. Twice many marriages and twice less divorce. So this information is just stunning based on Anna's presentation. And if we reach the same results, I believe that many political parties could even sign under these measures. I might be naive in believing that, but the results are so stunning that they are worth attention. And finally, I should say that we need more authentic data from Hungary, from Slovakia, from Czech Republic. Our media is intentionally either not representing that information, not reporting that information, or it provides biased information. For instance, Mr. Orban is constantly being demonized in our media. It's portrayed as a Russian agent. Can you imagine that during Trump term, Lithuania media didn't say any good sentence about what good he's done to America? It portrayed that Mr. Trump did only harm to America. So we are living under a certain censorship regime. It's strange. It differs from the Soviet censorship, because back in the Soviet regime, you knew what the Communist Party believed in, etc., etc., and you could read that reversed the message in a reversed way. And now the public opinion development is very biased, and even my students who are interested in Hungary and America, they say that it's impossible to read even academic books and articles because everything is represented in a very biased way. We need your data. We need to know what the real situation is. Give us the data.
I can see Giedre has a question. As a representative of media, hot portal comment.lt. I am a journalist. I can say that our media, neither Trump nor Orban, are not demonized. In our channel. We didn't have much information about Hungary, but if we have information, we try to disseminate it, to publicize it. YouTube has own rules. Censorship is on very high level. Information from our channel was eliminated. Discussion on family policy issues about traditional family. So it was accepted or treated or perceived as a hate speech. And in Lithuania, we have organized groups in Facebook. Liberals organize these groups in closed groups. I could see, I had even print screens on how we should be stopped in order to stop us from spreading this information. So people were asked to report to YouTube to block our channel, to block. So hate speech, no hate speech, people are encouraged to complain. So, so on the issue about traditional families, we try to publicize in our portal, in our commentaries.lt, and in the newspaper hot comment, where you cannot block information. So here are a few words about the media in Lithuania. Anna, question to you. In Hungary, is it possible in Lithuania, we don't have single-sex marriages, and one-sex couples cannot adopt children in Lithuania, but we have kind of, overcoming the law. One-sex couples, they raise children in Lithuania, but they under the cover of the stepfathers, stepfarriers. For example, children are temporarily taken from families, and as foster parents, they raise children. So they cannot adopt them, but you can take care of them when they are taken to foster care. So they kind of found kind of a gap in our laws. One-sex people, they found a gap in the Lithuanian laws, and so this is kind of a general information for you. Next week in Lithuania, the discussions will be held in Lithuania on one-sex partnership in Lithuania, and according to Jurgita Sejonienė from the Conservative Party, during the NATO summit, which will take place in Lithuania in July, this issue will be raised in Lithuania. This means that we have to clarify all those issues, because NATO will ask this question in July. Officially, several days ago, I applied to NATO. I sent my journalist's request to Stoltenberg, and I asked him on how NATO is related to the legalization of one-sex marriage, and on whether this issue will be addressed during the NATO summit in Vilnius in July. And if Lithuania will not adopt this law next week, if there is a threat to Article number 5, will it be not the situation that NATO will not defend us? And the NATO provided an official answer that this is Lithuania's matter. It has nothing to do with NATO, and Article number 5 is not related to the law which will be discussed next week by the Lithuanian politicians. So what about the do one-sex couples are allowed to take care of children?
So thank you for the question. The thing is that, as I previously mentioned, same-sex marriage is not supported in Hungary. The civil union of them is accepted. You mentioned loopholes about doing some loopholes around the law, which happens in Hungary in a way that if same-sex couples have married abroad of Hungary, under Hungarian legal system, it has to be accepted that they are married abroad. About the thing that they can take care of children in some, the Lithuanian legal system cannot really be converted to the Hungarian one at this point, because our system is different. And there was some big scandal about same-sex couple having the permission of taking care of a child. This was very much magnified by the opposition, which is very unfortunate. But the goal of the Hungarian government is to provide a legal system where situations and examples like this cannot happen, because under our legal system they cannot be the formal or official parents or caretakers of children like this. And about the previous topics that has been mentioned, just thank you very much for the kind comments about Hungarian family policy and about mentioning that you'd need the data. Just for your technical information, we brought the data. We have a brochure because, you know, I could go on for hours and hours about the technicalities and the details about Hungarian family policy, but there is a very good summary, and I can also send you the additional material about it because I see that there is an interest in it. And another comment about the homosexuality topic, that just as you very well described, the problem is not, there is no fight against homosexuality. We are not going into a battle against it because it's just a phenomenon that exists. What we do is support families instead of that, because there is no other way we can maintain our population, and because it is completely artificial and unnecessary to be dealing with legal frameworks and legal systems for things that are practically, I have to say, not in the interest of Hungarian people. So it doesn't have support from the majority. Why not deal with things that does have the majority and the interest of the people? So that's why we are focusing on what is important for the Hungarian population. One more thing about it is that about the blockings with the social media accounts, we also have some very sad experiences contrary to what the media, what the international media says about Hungary and what reaches Lithuania, which is very negative, and but we are used to it. It's a whole European phenomenon that very negative fake news are appearing about Hungary. Lithuania is an extreme situation, but as much as we are called like a dictatorship, the thing is that social media blockings do happen even in our government as well. So that's all about the dictatorship that we might have. Thank you.
Now, as far as I understand, we're out of time, at least today. Tomorrow we will continue our discussions with our dear guests and new speakers. So today I wish you all the best and good impressions in Vilnius, not only in Vilnius, and let's meet tomorrow. See you tomorrow.